But Mike, you also find that we become afraid that the more candles there are, they will illuminate things we ourselves don't want to look into. But we should, if we want to be better, right? I think we hold ourselves back in so many ways. We want to only talk to people who are going to compliment us. We only want to talk to people who agree with us or going to validate us. What happens as a result of that is people are right in front of you and you don't see them.
Hi, I'm Mike Abel. I'm a business, marketing and communications specialist and the founder of MNC Saatchi Abel. I'm a family man, a problem solver, a futurist, and an optimist at heart. Welcome to my podcast, Willing Abel, the home of hopeful conversations that challenge perspectives. It's a continuation of the ideas and conversations I began in my book, Willing Abel, Lessons from a Decade in Crisis. My guest today is Songezo Zibi, the national leader of RISE Mzansi, a modern political organization of patriotic South Africans. With over 2 decades' experience in roles spanning the automotive, mining, media, banking, and financial services industries, he's also an author, speaker, strategist, and mentor, and a good friend. Welcome, Songezo. So great to have you here today.
Mike, always good to see you and to speak to you.
So you were born in Mkhanduli,
Yes.
in the former Transkei. Tell us a little bit about your upbringing and how that has shaped you into the man that you are today.
Mike, Mkhanduli is where my heart is. It's where my soul is in so many ways. So I was born to a single mother. My mom had me when she was 19. My date of birth is disputed. She says it was the 28th. And on my certificate of baptism, which was done at the church, it says I was born on the 27th.
Of
But
which month?
December. 1975. Yes.
Okay. Not the 25th of December.
No, but Mike, then the downside of being born on the 28th is that you don't get any presents because
Yes.
it's after Christmas. Nobody's around or has any money left. So, but I was born to a single mother. But I was fortunate, blessed really, to have 2 wonderful grandparents. And I'm particularly grateful that I'm told I was the first child that my grandfather got to raise after he stopped drinking heavily.
Okay.
And so this person that they describe who used to be drunk every day and be abusive, it's like I've never seen that guy because he was always gentle, always understanding, always helpful. He was a man of service in many ways. And part of that upbringing, by my grandparents, my mother's great, but the first 14 years of my life was with my grandmother. But I also grew up in a village where everybody who was older than me was either my big brother, big sister, or a parent in one way or another. And so people ask me, how did it feel to grow up without a dad? Honestly, Mike, I don't know what that's like. Because there was always a father figure. It taught me lots of things: responsibility, community, shared experiences. And it informs what I'm doing now in politics, because sometimes I wish South Africa could be like the village I grew up in, where everybody cared for one another. And everybody's kid was everybody's kid. Every kid was everybody's kid, And you were other people's big brother, even if they were not your blood relatives. So that's how my village and my upbringing, Mike, have shaped me.
Beautiful. Well, I think we have to change the saying now to say, it takes a village to raise a country.
Absolutely.
I like that model very much. So you have a wealth of experience as a communications specialist and a journalist. So let's go a little bit back to your time as editor of the Business Day, because I think people will be very interested in that. What was the most important lesson you learnt when you were in that role?
To know what I didn't know.
Mm.
That was the most important lesson. And it needs humility, because, when you have the power to publish things that could either help people or be incredibly damaging, I found that it's really helpful to understand what you don't know, because in your journalistic inquiry, you want to find out what do I not know? And once you know what you don't know, you then try and understand it. And if you do that, your writing and your production and your editing become better. And that was my approach to the job.
That's so interesting in terms of focusing on what you don't know, because when I watch so much mainstream media today, I see so much behavior that presupposes you know everything already,
Yeah.
and the line of questioning based on an agenda. So you don't actually get the fresh and unexpected responses. I see journalists today leading a witness, and that plays out so much on social media as well. So, what is your advice then to younger people in terms of having inquiring minds, in terms of looking for what they don't know? Because obviously, as a leader of a new political party, if everybody votes for what they do know, you can't transform or change a country. So, what are your thoughts around getting people, I think, to question what they don't know? What was your approach of discovery of what you don't know? How did you realize what you didn't know?
So, Mike, interestingly, and that maybe since we're talking to young people, I'll speak particularly about the experience of writing an opinion piece. So, I think that the best opinion pieces that I produce follow a heated argument with somebody.
I love that.
And what I end up writing in the opinion piece is not what I'd initially intended to write. Because I realized when I read it that what I was arguing about with Mike, what he was saying to me is now in the piece. Or the way I am now expressing this view is better because of what you were arguing with me about. And so what I would say is always look for somebody who disagrees with you. They will make you better. They'll make you better at writing. They'll make you better at shaping your own worldview and so on. Look for somebody who disagrees with you and have a good-natured disagreement and see.
I think that's so useful because, again, the way of today and much of social media is around cancel culture.
Yeah.
And so you disapprove of people who have a different view as opposed to appreciating people.
Yeah.
Because as they say, if two people in the room agree on everything, you only need one of them.
Yes, that's true.
So I absolutely love that. So if you look at the media industry today, do you think things have changed in a positive way over the last 5 years? Would you say that media is headed in not such a positive direction? What is your perspective on the media industry?
There's a good and a bad, Mike. 10 years ago, a conversation such as this that can be distributed was not going to happen, right? Generally, very few people could pull it off. But you and I can sit here, have this conversation, and this podcast can be distributed to thousands of people, or even millions of people. I think that's fundamentally a good thing. It's fundamentally a good thing. But here's a negative. People who seek to divide and harm society have access to the same. And so the role of journalism for me, I feel it is to accept the responsibility of applying the nuance to this really divided terrain and echo chambers and mutual counseling of people's views and so on. And when I was at Business Day, people would write and say, "Why did you publish that guy? He's a neoliberal. Why do you publish that guy?" And I would say, my job is not to protect you from views you don't like. My job is to make sure the piece is well written. It doesn't abuse anybody's rights, doesn't put anybody in danger, and there is no disinformation. Otherwise, the piece is good to go.
Yes.
Right? And then it is up to you to decide whether you agree with it or not. It's not my job to filter what is in the paper. And we had a very diverse core of columnists at Business Day, from the Free Market Foundation on the one hand, all the way to leftists that used to write for Business Day. I mean, Nomalanga Mkhize, we used to write on education mostly for us, is a leftist.
Yeah.
But she existed on the same pages as somebody from the Free Market Foundation, and that's a good thing.
Absolutely. That's very interesting, because when you say that, I'm reminded of a saying, which is a candle loses nothing by lighting another candle.
Yeah.
And I think that that's what you want to do today, is inspire, ignite thought, as opposed to people that see their role in life as blowing out candles.
Yeah, yeah.
Because, that's a very easy thing to do.
And there's too much of it, Mike.
Yeah. And the more candles, the more illumination.
But Mike, you also find that we become afraid that the more candles there are, they will illuminate things we ourselves don't want to look into. But we should, if we want to be better. Right? I think we hold ourselves back in so many ways. We want to only talk to people who are going to compliment us. We only want to talk to people who agree with us or going to validate us. What happens as a result of that is people are right in front of you and you don't see them. You don't understand their life experience, not because they're not telling you, because you refuse to allow the candle to go into that part of their lives, right? And I think it's a constant struggle these days, with social media and so on.
It's true. I mean, there's a wonderful saying. As you already know, have a saying for every occasion, unfortunately. I drive myself crazy with my sayings. But there's a saying that sometimes in your darkest place lies your greatest reward.
That's true.
The places that you don't ordinarily go to in your own mind and your own heart.
Yeah.
That there's rich reward. And, I left Twitter recently for a month. I'm yet to decide whether I'm going to go on or not, because for me, Twitter was like going into a dark cave, and I'd shine my light there for illumination. But more often than not, all you do is attract the shrieking vampire bats from the ceiling.
Yeah.
And as opposed to lighting a path for others.
Yes.
So I think you've articulated that challenge beautifully. Your LinkedIn profile calls you an entrepreneur, a dreamer, a doer, and a visionary. I think you're all of those. It's refreshing to say that, you're a dreamer and a doer in the same breath. What do you think the most valuable things are that you're doing in life right now to bring those two things together?
Believe it or not, the first one is being a parent. I am finding that I don't only have my own dreams, but the dreams of our 3 children. It's just been a sort of a weird experience, because before I became a parent, it was all me. I didn't quite understand. And the thing about having kids is that you've got your own dreams. They become your dream. Their dreams become yours. And you got to try and help them make those dreams come through every day. And that's the doing part of it. So that's one. The second is being part of RISE Mzansi and having the responsibility of being a national leader. Sometimes I'm in the shower and I'm thinking, oh my God, am I crazy or what? And I look at my colleagues, Vuiswa, Debucho, Esther, and I see how hard they work.
They're not in the shower with you.
They're not in the shower with me. Thankfully, they're not in the shower. I don't think I'd have lots of time to think, because people always shower.
Sorry, I had to do that to
you. But I look at them and how committed they are. And I think, in society, sometimes we tend to talk about dreamers as people who do nothing. And I look at these guys and I think these are dreamers who do. These are dreamers who do every day. And there is reward in the doing. People ask me, what does success look like? So success is being able to do what we're doing every day. I wake up and we go for it. We think big, we dream big, we go for it in small steps every day, but we're going for it. It's so rewarding. I love it.
When you talk about your children's dreams and what they want, I haven't actually thought about it until now, about part of the role of parenting is to be a conduit to your children's dreams.
Yeah.
You know, I'm a very involved dad. It's the thing that I love doing most, I guess, in addition to, being a husband to Sarah for many years. But I've always thought that my role is to make them feel like they can achieve anything they dream of doing. But I've never thought of myself as being a conduit to their dreams. And I like that very much because it also is a lot about what can I learn from them
Yeah.
in my own journey,
Yeah.
which I'm aware of. But I think in terms of being, you spoke earlier about seeing people and being in the moment and actually to think about those things actively as a parent, not just assuming the role of raising children,
Of raising children.
if you like.
Absolutely.
I like that. Okay, so something very, very close to our hearts at the moment. When the Springboks won the Rugby World Cup in October 2023, you wrote a piece about the team's leadership, saying nothing rivals the deep satisfaction and pride that comes from getting something you deserve. What in your life has given you this feeling?
Whew. Mike, you asked me a tough question now. Sure. I would say that it has been the recognition that that was informal
Yeah,
at Business Day, or as a result of the work that we did at Business Day when I
Yeah.
was editor. I didn't understand how much we changed people's lives in so many ways. Some people are famous these days as a result of writing for Business Day, or they did their most important work when they were at Business Day. People used to read Business Day for, it touched them in different ways. And here's the part about being proud and deserving. So I think a lot of people listening to this podcast know Wandile Sihlobo. Wandile Sihlobo started out writing publicly in the Business Day.
I didn't know that.
He started in the Business Day. And I thought he was a brilliant young man. Wandile is 32, 33. He's a kid.
A very brilliant one still.
He's a brilliant kid. And nearly a decade ago, he was, 7 years ago, he was writing for Business Day. He was writing for the Business Day, right? Being read by ministers and governors of the Reserve Bank and so on. And he plays a really important role in the country. And I feel proud that we were able to elevate his brilliance and give it a platform. And as a result, he's doing really important work for the country. He gives his knowledge freely, Mike, whether it is the government, it is companies, it is communal farmers in the Eastern Cape or KZN and so on. He's such a gift. And I'm really proud. So when people say that you did a wonderful job at Business Day, actually, let me have a much better appreciation of it now because they say why. They say you introduced us to Wandile, you introduced us to Nomalanga Mkhize, to Zaman Ndlovu and so on. And so that's the one thing.
Yeah.
Quite a few, but that's the one.
There's a bit of a theme happening here. We spoke just now, you spoke about being a parent, and what I took out of it was a conduit to ensuring your children's dreams happened. We've now spoken about talent there and a conduit, and now I'm thinking of your latest journey in the political arena, and I can only then imagine that your dream is to be a conduit for people in this country to have more successful, happier lives, because it seems like that's your wiring. Would you agree with that?
No, I would. And Mike, I'll go back to the first question that you asked me about my upbringing and my grandfather. I tell people all the time that I realize now that in so many ways I am my grandfather. My grandmother, because my grandfather was so kind and understanding, so we had 2 milli fields, maize fields, one for yellow maize, the other one for white maize.
Okay.
And people's goats sometimes used to go and like chow the crops and so on, and he would get upset, we would impound them. So my grandfather always forgave the people.
Yeah.
He wouldn't make them pay damages, which used to irritate my grandmother. And one day she said, I am sure one day you will sit alone bored in heaven while the rest of us are having fun in hell. But he was a generous
Yeah.
person. There were kids whose moms, when they went into labor, he took to hospital
Yeah.
in the night
Yeah.
and so on. I love doing that, Mike. For me, that's just what being a grown-up is.
Yeah.
It's not even a political thing. It's like when you're a grown-up, you make things possible for kids, for other people, and they do it back for you without you asking.
For kids of all ages.
Yeah, for kids of all ages, even grown-up kids, yeah.
Yeah.
Mike Abel's book, Willing and Able, Lessons from a Decade in Crisis, captures the stories of clients and partners and the wins, losses, and learnings through his eyes in a career spanning 3 decades. Whether you're looking for courage or inspiration, to learn what it takes to disrupt industries, or discover how to transform your company meaningfully and truly empower your people, you'll find it between these pages. You can listen to the audiobook on Audible, download it on your Kindle, order it online, or find it at your favorite bookstore.
So speaking about childhood, one of the things we do as kids, not so much as adults, is crying.
Yes.
But when I read your article, you said you admitted crying numerous times after our win.
I did.
What else really pulls at your heartstrings, and how do you think vulnerability makes you better as a leader?
Mike, I cry a lot, by the way.
Oh, do you?
I cry quite often.
Okay.
I cry quite often.
I think that's very healthy. I wish I did.
Mike, I do. I cry when I see people succeed just for themselves, seeing how happy they are and getting to hear the story of how they got there. You think, my God, what a journey it has been. So I cry when that happens. I cry when people suffer. I cry when people are sad. You can take me to a funeral, Mike, of somebody I've never met. And I will look at the family and how sad they are, and tears will just roll down my cheeks. My wife is used to it, and my kids are. But some people get freaked out by it. But I think it's important. I mean, I cry like easy. I don't want to say easily, but without fear of judgment.
Well, you're giving people out there that are listening today a huge gift, because I've always believed that vulnerability is strength, not weakness. When you are vulnerable and when you are empathetic, that makes you a very powerful leader. It's the people who are unable to cry at all, that are unable to feel, who are actually weak. Because not only don't they understand other people, but they don't understand themselves. Because if they did understand themselves, they'd feel emotion.
Yeah. No, I agree.
So I think that is, as I said, it's a great gift you're giving to people in that. And so, cry people.
Mike, I wrote that piece in one sitting. I went through all the emotions of that Springbok win. I was initially delirious, obviously, very, very happy, very happy. So and then I just took it in over the next couple of days, and there were a couple of moments, but there was that moment when Sia ran across to Cheslin Kobe.
Yeah, who was distraught. I mean, face hidden in his jersey.
That finished me, because that's love. That's seeing someone. That said to me, Sia was on the field thinking about his teammate and his friend and fighting for him too, because he understood what would happen to him emotionally if the Springboks lost. I got a sense that Sia was so much happier for Cheslin than he was for himself.
Yeah.
And that's beautiful, man. It made me cry.
It is. The superpower of Sia is often ascribed to being a leader with love, a leader who loves his people. And, again, the strength that comes from that vulnerability in opening yourself up as a leader. Yeah, I must actually get Sia on the show as well.
Please do. I think he would be amazing.
If I can get him to South Africa. So you've used the term listening politics to describe your party's approach. A lot of people
Yes.
don't know a lot about your party, and you'll tell them here. But where do you think you discovered, or when do you think you discovered the value of what I would call, in your case, deep listening?
So, Mike, I discovered it when I was at Rivonia Circle and we're doing something called Democracy Builder, which still continues. So, I've worked for companies. I've got my own life experiences, just growing up in a village and so on, and,
Yeah.
going to boarding school. And so you think you know a lot. And then you work for large companies. You travel the world. You think you know a lot. You become a journalist. And you're dealing in information, enormous information. I think, really, I know a lot. And then we started going out with Democracy Builder. And I thought, I have not been listening or seeing. Because even the things I already knew,
Yeah.
the way people expressed themselves around those issues was just so much clearer and better than anything I could have come up with. And that's when I realized, if we want the language that will resonate with people, we've got to listen first and listen intently. So practically, Mike, in short, it means now when people say we want jobs, we ask, why do you want a job? And they say, not because we want to buy food and so on. Is food a problem? Yes. How often do you eat? Maybe once a day. You see, it opens a window. But if people say, no, we want a job, say, okay, great. You know no better than you did before they told you. But when you ask so that you can listen some more, I realized this is the way we should do politics. And it's working. It's working. RISE Mzansi is growing at a rate that surprises me, to be honest.
Well, I think people value being heard enormously, because I think people, as you've said, you touched on a couple of times in this conversation, is there's a difference between being seen and being heard, or being there and being seen.
Yes. Yeah.
Even.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I've heard you say that when you meet people at campaigning events, you ask, if you could change 5 things, what would they be?
Yeah.
I'm about to turn that same question on you.
Those 5 things, Mike, and I'll just list them. The first would be if every family were to have 3 healthy meals a day.
Yeah.
That really, before anything, just 3 healthy meals a day. So that would be the first thing. The second thing would be for everyone to feel safe in South Africa. Mike, it's one thing to be safe. It's quite another to also feel safe. And I think sometimes we are safe, but we still don't feel safe because the danger is lurking outside, even within the safe space. It's lurking. So that's the second thing. This feeling of national safety, I think we would be just less angry, less adversarial, more willing to listen. So that's the second thing. The third thing that I think, Mike, if we can do is to just change the way we think about common public problems. I'll make an example with drug addiction. You talk about drugs, people want to throw everyone in prison. You're like, okay, they are the guys who sell drugs. They're the guys who need to go to rehab because it's a public health issue. Can we not always think about how we condemn people, but then what after, right? So we're going to make an intervention to send them to prison, and then what? For consuming, I don't know how many milligrams of drugs. So that's the third thing, changing mindsets. The fourth, Mike, is if every community were to have sporting and arts facilities. Mike, we underestimate the importance of joy in people's lives, or even moments of joy. And there are people whose lives, even when they want to be joyful, the tools for being joyful are not there.
Yes.
Right, so that would be the fourth thing. And the last one is, Mike, is where if South Africans would have a decent opportunity to not just survive, but to build wealth. We don't even, we talk about poverty alleviation. And I always think, let's be bold, man.
Mm.
Let's talk about eliminating poverty and building wealth, you know, for people, where people can do that themselves.
Yeah.
They can dream and be like, I can do it. And I think you've got a much better chance of doing that when you are safe and you've got the opportunity to be joyful, Mike. I think.
You know, I think that people need to succumb to joy, to let go, to let joy in.
Yeah.
And I think that we all hold so much often in this country that the ability to allow joy to penetrate is a difficult thing.
We feel ashamed of being
Yeah.
joyful sometimes.
Yes.
And even when the opportunity is here,
Yeah.
we don't see it.
Yeah.
Because we think we shouldn't be
Yeah.
joyful. And one of the things we've learned from our friends from the African American community, from an organizing point of view, they say, guys, try and organize around joy. RISE Mzansi has soccer tournaments for gogos.
Are
And
they
you know
any
what?
good?
Mike, doesn't matter. They are wild. The people there, the laughter, the involvement, and so on. And you think, this is beautiful,
Yeah.
right? And I think we should do more of that.
I love that, because what that would do, obviously, is to ignite the inner child in them,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
get
And they
them a-
argue. You know, they argue like, about a goal or a referee's call, and then they're confused. They don't know their rules. But it's lovely.
I love that. So, Songezo, the author, your first book, Raising the Bar, Hope and Renewal in South Africa, was published in 2014. If you had to write that book again right now, what would be different?
Nothing.
Really?
Nothing.
So if you had to say what is the key premise and belief from your book, that thought that you think is constant, that would apply right now, what is that enduring truth?
It's that we have the power to change our circumstances. It's always been clear to me. Okay, not always. Since I've realized that we have the power, I've believed that consistently. And that's and you know, Barack Obama, of all people, in none of his famous speeches, I think he was doing an interview, and he said, democracy is an experiment in self-government. You're always experimenting, and you're always trying to make it better. No, in fact, it was a speech, a more perfect union.
Okay.
I think you must look at it, Mike. A more perfect union. It was
Okay.
beautiful, because he was saying we must always strive for perfection of this democracy, and it will never be.
Yeah.
But in the work that we do, we change a lot of lives.
Yeah.
We make the country better. We make society better. And since I've believed that, I just thought, we got to learn to do it in small, incremental quantities, but we got to do it.
Yeah.
And we can change the world.
The concept of failing forwards, I guess, that knowing it won't be perfect, and perfection isn't the aim, but, 2 steps forward, not 1 step
Not
back.
one step back.
Yeah. I like that very much. So you are a very hopeful man. How do you find the balance, though, between hope and realism?
Through Jonathan Mokes. I'm a campaign manager. But I think generally in life, Mike, I mean, sometimes hope can really run away. I mean, I have these swings, Mike, where I am super hopeful, and then sometimes I like swing the other way. I'm like, maybe we're just too hopeful and so on. But I would put down the ability to continue moving forward, hopefully, in having a moral idea as a driver of what you do. I find it difficult to connect with endeavors that don't have a sort of a moral idea that you're trying to achieve. And I find that even when I'm really dejected, when I wake up the next day, I think of the moral imperative, and then I just get up and I do it. And I think for me, that has been the key to remaining hopeful, that a better tomorrow is possible. I don't have to know how, today when I'm still in the pits.
Yeah.
But I know that tomorrow morning, I will know what to do. Sometimes people ask me, so like, what's your plan for tomorrow? I say, I don't know.
Yeah.
So I said, I have no idea. But trust me, tomorrow we're moving.
Yeah.
And you wake up tomorrow. Could be in the shower, you could be running, you could be walking. I'm sure it happens to you, Mike. You're like, bingo.
Yeah.
And you get going.
Yeah. Well, I know what the answer is to that. And that is that your subconscious is far more powerful than your conscious mind in
Yeah.
problem solving.
Yeah.
So I actively apply that. I take a problem and I don't think about how I'm going to solve the problem at all. I identify the problem and then I leave it. And then exactly what you say, often in the shower, often on a hike on the mountain, suddenly it comes to me, that aha moment.
Yes.
That if I had to sit down at my desk and think about it, I don't think I'd get to the answer.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And that's, there is a verse in the Bible. I'm not one of these people who can recite the Bible, but there is a verse in the Bible that talks about a bird that only worries about what it's going to eat in the immediate. It doesn't worry so much about tomorrow. But in a way, it doesn't mean, I'm interpreting this verse, it doesn't mean that tomorrow takes care of itself. It just means that the universe, if you trust in the universe and you do what you're supposed to do and you apply yourself and you work hard with the right people and so on, tomorrow things will line up. If it's not tomorrow, it's the next day. Just don't give up, right? And eventually you come across the right people. You're a successful businessman. I'm sure that's happened a few times in your life.
Yeah.
Where you're like, how did I meet so-and-so again? You're like, I didn't want to go there that day.
Yeah.
And I met so-and-so there.
Yes. Yes. Well, I think that, if you put positive energy into the universe, and I'm a very big believer in it, then you've got to go with the universe. You've got to allow it to take you where it's going to take you. And, sometimes things don't, when you and I first met one another 20-something years ago, when you were, starting out at Volkswagen South Africa.
And you guys were actually in this neighborhood.
Yeah.
Weren't you guys around Gardens?
We were in like Roland Street.
Roland Street,
near Parliament.
Yeah. Yes, near Parliament. And then ETV came into the same vicinity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Who would have imagined, and here we are, in different incantations and iterations and just the stream of life, I guess.
Yeah.
But I think that when you are burdened with a lot of responsibility, like you are, and like I am in many ways, and you sometimes battle, to see how it's going to end positively, where it's going to get to when you, I guess, confront many challenges at any point in time. What is it in you that you think prevents you from giving up? That at the moment you think, actually, I can't do this anymore. I'm wasting my time. Yeah, it's too hard. What is that thing that gets you going? Is that your grandpa? What is it that you kind of draw on that says, come on, push on?
So look, it's like I said, I channel my grandparents a lot.
Yeah.
My grandfather. But by the way, if I were to name a specific hero, it's my grandmother rather than my grandfather.
Okay.
In many ways, I think if she had lived in a different time, she would have been a very successful chief executive of a company or even a president. But there are two. When I'm doing something alone, Mike, I have thoughts of giving up a lot more often than I do when I'm doing it with others.
That's a powerful insight.
And what keeps me going is seeing the other people going. It drives me in a way, Mike, that I cannot describe. And then we find out later that all of us were thinking of giving up.
Yeah, absolutely.
But we thought none of us were giving up. So I love that. But when I'm by myself, I always find inspiration in the most vulnerable person who needs me to succeed. As a parent, it's my daughter. She's turning 7 in December. And my daughter needs my wife and I to succeed, needs the country to change, and that drives me. Right? But in any situation, even now, in the work of RISE Mzansi, where we were, I take a particular interest in the kids, but I mean like toddlers. Because sometimes people bring toddlers there. And I look at these guys, they are insulated from deeply understanding what's going on around them by their age and being naive. And my hope is by the time these guys develop the ability of insight and understanding their environment, I really hope things are better. And that's enough to keep me going. Because then they don't get into the trauma, Mike.
Yeah.
They don't have to deal with the trauma. It puts a time limit on an incentive to do things quickly.
Yes.
And urgently.
Yes.
It infuses urgency. That's the right word.
You've given me a lot to think about.
The Street Store turns 10 this year. The world's first rent-free, premises-free, free pop-up store provides a dignified shopping experience to those in need, allowing them to choose from a selection of pre-loved clothing and shoes. Over 1,000 stores have been hosted around the world in the past decade, and now we're calling on you to host your own. Visit thestreetstore.org to sign up and find out how.
When you talk to people and you tell them something about yourself, what is it that you don't tell them? What would people be most surprised to hear about you as we sit here right now?
Mike, I mean, it is that I used to sing in a choir.
Did you?
Yeah, I did. I could read music.
Okay.
I could read music.
Wow.
And
What type of music? When you say like a gospel choir?
No. Like those music signs. Do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do.
Very
I could
good.
do that. I could
Very
do
good.
that, right? And so if I saw,
Yes.
I needed to understand how the tune of the song
okay.
is, I could read it and then sing it
Okay.
and
Wow.
practice it and sing it because I was in a choir. The reason I don't tell people Mike,
Songezo Bocelli.
the reason I don't tell them Mike is I'm so bad at singing now.
Oh, really? That
Yeah.
sounded pretty good to me.
Yeah, I know, but like when you don't sing actively, I mean, anyway, I don't tell people that I used to be in a choir actually and I could read music and so on. But because they ask me to sing and then they believe me less, even.
Well, it's funny because I've never sung in a choir. I've sung in the shower, and my wife tells me not to sing. But
Can I tell you something,
Yes.
Mike? An interesting story about the singing. So I used to sing. So I was in standard 7, it's grade 9 these days,
Yes.
and I go to boarding school, and then I would sing in a choral voice,
yes,
coming from the shower,
yes,
right to the dormitory. I would
Okay.
sing. And then one of the older boys at Dom 37 looked out and he said, "Hey, come here." So I came, he says, "You are going to join the school choir." I was like, no. So our choir master was my aunt.
okay.
And she drove us hard. And I hated the fact that she wanted us to practice for hours. I mean, we used to win awards and so on, but I didn't like it. So I go to boarding school. I don't want to do it. That guy, Mike, Vumile Nomanyama, that guy who said, come
Yeah.
over here, he is a very successful on Broadway and West End,
Oh, really?
London. He was on Umoja. He's on international productions. He
Amazing.
literally lives between Sydney, London, and New York.
Oh, wow. Maybe you can help get
that
him on
guy.
the show.
That guy.
I'd love to talk to him.
So I'm
Amazing.
gonna look for him. It's an amazing story.
Yeah.
That guy. He went that far.
Well, there's so many amazing stories. You know, the other day I was talking about Pretty Yendi, and people said, "Who?" And I said, "The South African opera singer that sang at King Charles's coronation." And our country doesn't know
Oh no.
about her, and our
Don't
country
tell
doesn't
me.
know about your friend. I don't
No.
know. that you know?
People don't. I bumped into him at Frankfurt Airport some years ago.
Yeah,
And I could see, the South African flight leaves late.
yeah,
And I thought, that guy is looking at me.
yeah.
He keeps looking, so I went over. And it was him. So I asked him, "So where do you come from?" He says, "I'm going home. But he tells me what he does, and I Googled him. And I'm like, hey, there are all of these pictures of him on stage in London and all of these wonderful
Hamilton.
places. Yeah, you could find.
So in your latest book, Manifesto, A New Vision for South Africa, you challenge South Africans to take on a new generational mission, to accept the responsibility of leadership. What is the smallest but most impactful way, in your mind, that the average South African can do to drive this forward in society?
Mike, I would say it is to think of the nearest democratic structure in your life and get involved with it. There are many. So I live in Gauteng and there are estates, so you get body corporates and so on. People don't get involved with the body corporate, but they should.
I run away from them. But
People
anyway.
don't come to the AGM, the school governing body.
Yes.
And. I think we don't realize how important this work is. And then sometimes I'll sit. I'm not in the body corporate myself. In my estate.
There we go.
But I'm in a bigger body corporate called RISE Mzansi.
Yeah.
But sometimes I listen to the residents, the way they speak to the guys on the body corporate who don't get paid, who are also residents. And I'm thinking, but guys, come on. These guys also have jobs. They've got kids that they got to take to school and look after. Like, they don't work for us in the way that you're speaking to them. This whole thing belongs to all of us. It's a residents association. It's ours. Like, why are you talking like this? And now we must nominate people for the following years. But oh no, the same people that were allowed. So if we can just change that, Mike, there would be so much that we can accomplish as a country.
Accountability.
Accountability. It's responsibility, Mike. It's accountability, holding ourselves accountable. So I participate more now in the affairs of my kids' school than I did a few years ago. I make sure I know what's going on.
What do you think it is about South Africans and South African politics where there is such a low level of accountability? Certainly if I look at the country since, I guess, 2008, the end of the Mbeki presidency. Why do you think people have stopped holding our politicians accountable in South Africa?
Mike, I'm going to say something surprising here. And I would say it's Eurocentrism of our politics.
Okay.
This is what I mean. Where, I spoke earlier about how being a grown-up, for me, in my community, is about being responsible.
Yeah.
Right? If there's one thing that changed after 94, at least in black communities, it is that sense of responsibility. Now, if you withdraw from being responsible yourself, what are the chances that you're going to hold someone else accountable? My school was built by the community. There would be a meeting at the headman's place. They would say the fence at the school needs to be redone and refreshed. In 2 Saturdays' time, all the men are going there to do it. That's a decision of the whole village. And you know what? In 2 weeks' time, that place is teeming with people. They're putting up the fence. Mike, that's a really powerful thing.
It is.
Right? Now, the ANC comes and they say, and sort of say Westminster's type politics, says the political party is the agent, you are the customer. They go and they do it. Of course, it doesn't happen. Because even holding them accountable is taking accountability yourself, right? But now we don't want to do anything. And I feel that if we can restore some of the things that help democracy but aren't necessarily based on democracy them in and of themselves, the democracy would get better. Because you decide, I'm not a child, I'm a grown-up. I'm not going to let Panyaza Lesufi do this which I can't explain to my own kids. I'm going to challenge him because I want to be able to explain it to my kids. It's a simple thing that people in the village could do. On the bigger stage, no. a journalist must go and ask.
Mm. Well, I do think that, they say that charity starts at home. Accountability starts at home. Accountability starts within yourself. And I think that for those listening today, I think that's a very powerful message. People are great today at holding other people accountable, but you can't hold other people accountable until you hold yourself accountable. You don't have the right to hold other people accountable until you hold yourself accountable for your own behavior. I know you're a curious man, and you said earlier that I guess what was the benchmark of your journalism was finding out or knowing what you didn't know. So if I had to ask you what you are curious about right now, what would it be? What are you wanting to know more about?
Mike, I'm actually wanting to know more about AI.
Yeah,
I'm wanting to know more about AI.
so do I.
Because I mean it's fantastic, right? It's like it blows my mind every time I see things that come out of machine learning and so on. But I don't understand it enough I don't understand it enough to know how to make use of it effectively.
Yeah.
And what I should be careful of,
Mm.
right? By way of whatever is adverse, from it. But I also, it is not properly integrated into how I develop ideas in my head, to be honest. It's a thing on the side that I'm like, okay, there's AI, but I feel like just the strength of my own ideas, if it was as integrated as economics is in my head, I would be a much better thinker and a much better person. I don't know enough about AI.
So I can help you with that a little bit. I think it was Prometheus who was thrown out of heaven by the gods for giving man fire. And as you know, fire can be used to give light, to give warmth, to cook, or it can burn everything down. And that's what we have with AI today.
Yeah.
I think we have this opportunity to harness this thing in a very positive way, if that's how we choose to harness it, or it can be utterly destructive. And I don't think now that the genie is out the bottle, we are ever going to be able to harness it one way versus the other. The same way with the invention of a car. It can get you safely from A to B, or it can kill you on the way if you drive like a lunatic. And I think the responsibility that you talk about, the personal responsibility, the personal accountability, is to harness the power in a positive way. And I think there are many, many, many positive ways around that. Because you are such an empathetic man, I'm going to ask you quite a hard question. What are some of the challenges that we are facing at the moment in connecting with each other as a country, as a people?
I think the biggest challenge is seeing each other fundamentally as human beings. Before any label, seeing each other as human beings. Mike, there's an article I read almost every quarter, and I've done so for years. It was written by Thabo Mbeki. Can't remember. I think it was 2005 or 2006 in one of his Friday letters, where he used to deal with whomever he didn't like sometimes or who pissed him off. But he wrote this really seminal article, Learning to Listen to and Hear One Another. Short version is former police minister Adrian Flock had washed Reverend Frank Chikane's feet.
Okay, I remember
as an
that.
act of contrition. And there were people that made fun of it. And
really?
there was a lot of derision and said it's insincere and so on. And Thabo Mbeki writes this beautiful piece that basically says, this is the arc of Adrian Flock's life. For a man of his upbringing and political and other beliefs to end up here, washing Reverend Frank Chikane's feet, is an incredible lesson in personal transformation and being able to deal with your demons and confronting things that you've done in your life. And I mean, he didn't say it in these words. And he said if we understood that, we would understand how powerful that act was. Now, you would think Thabo Mbeki got and bet for Adrian Flock, like in which universe? And I learned something. And you know, Mike, with things happening in the world, so much conflict and so on, I went back to that article and I read it again. And I was like, you know, that's not what we're doing. We always look for people we like and we agree with. And the people we disagree with, we don't want to listen deeply and understand. And myself, I need to reconnect with that and understand that you can love deeply people who disagree with you profoundly. And it wouldn't be strange because I understand where you're coming from and you understand where I'm coming from. One day we will meet in the middle. But you know what? Because I understand you, I'm not able to lose my love for you. That's what that told me. And if we could have that today, Mike, we would be better people, all of us, I think.
Amen. I agree. And I think that it's, as you say, it's understanding, opening yourself up to understanding as opposed to judgment.
Yeah. We want to be right.
Yeah.
We want to win. We want to win the argument. And in fact, Michaela Wrong, the British journalist, once said to me, you don't have to have an answer to everything. The search for answers itself is worth it.
I agree with you 100%.
And it takes you to people and places that you never thought you would go. But the search for answers.
So you may have answered this already, I'm not sure, in what you've just said. But, you know, as we hit the home stretch of each episode of Willing and Able, I ask my guest a cornerstone question. And Songezo, my question to you is, what are we not saying in South Africa at the moment?
What we don't say enough is, I don't understand. Yes, I don't understand. I love the movies. And you may remember the movie Philadelphia.
I do.
With Tom Hanks and
Brilliant.
Denzel Washington.
Yeah, amazing movie.
And what did Denzel Washington's character say?
Yeah.
Explain this to me as if I'm a 5-year-old. Right? I won't get offended.
Yes.
We don't say that. We don't ever say that. We already know.
Yes.
There is so much pain and conflict and missed opportunity in saying, I don't know, I don't understand. In not saying, I don't know, I don't understand. Tell me.
Yeah.
Mike, if we did that, amen.
Yeah.
And it's seen as weakness. You know, even in the context of the politics that we're doing, people say, yeah, you can't be successful as a politician because of that.
Yeah.
And I always think, why not?
Yeah.
What was the whole thing about Madiba, though? That's what it was.
Yeah.
Right? That's what it was. And I feel we don't say that enough.
Yeah. Yeah. No, people feel vulnerable. They feel scared. They don't like to feel not in control. You know, I sometimes sit in a meeting and I'll hear the CEO of a company talk about, you know, the BNZ of the APU, and I've got no idea what that acronym means. And I'll say to him, sorry, but, you know, I don't use Denzel's line, but I say, I don't know what you've just said. Can you unpack it for me?
Yeah.
But I notice the other people in the meeting sit there nodding their heads sagely, and they've got no clue.
No idea what it is.
So I think it's about vulnerability. Strength, as you say, comes through vulnerability. Strength comes through emotion. Strength comes through opening up and, you know, being real. So talking about that, is there something that is important that you've changed your mind about? If I had to say, you held a strong position on something, and then through the journey of your life, you've changed your opinion on that. Is there such an example you could give me?
There is, Mike. It's an interesting thing. It's my evolving understanding of the Afrikaner community.
Mm.
I grew up understanding Afrikaners as the oppressors.
Yes.
And in a context, it was true, right?
Sure.
But I had a realization at some point that they're also stuck here with us. They're stuck here with us. They can't
Yeah.
even go back to Holland. They won't know them there.
Yeah.
They are a tribe now. And if anyone, it must be part of solving our country's problems. We gotta all change our mindset. They gotta change theirs. We gotta change ours, and see one another as African tribes that love Africa, that want to share it in prosperity. So it's a particular thing. I mean, you grow up singing songs about Amabunu and so on. That's change, Mike.
Yeah, well, I think that you touched on it earlier, is to be able to see people as people, as having good in them, finding one another. Much more challenging, much harder. It's easy to hate.
Yeah.
It's easy to shut down. It's not easy to be vulnerable and to open up and to say, I'm a dad, you're a dad, let's find each other there. Or I'm a businessman, you're a businessman. Or I'm a politician, you're a politician. There's got to be, commonality, points of entry. And I think that if you do put, which you've touched on a number of times beautifully in this conversation, is seeking understanding.
Yeah.
And if you do, you'll find each other. Songezo, my friend, I want to thank you for sharing your insights with me today and with our listeners.
Mike. Thank you so much.
I'm personally so reinvigorated after this discussion, and I'll be fascinated to see how the future South Africa unfolds in 2024 and beyond. Really, may us all continue to keep dreaming about what you talk about and doing amazing things, personal things, big things, small things in this beloved country of ours.
Thank you very much for having me.
I know it's gonna happen. These dreams, they are for chasing. Don't stop, we got to keep racing.
Thanks so much for listening today. If you enjoyed this podcast, why not leave us a 5-star review? Tune in to Willing and Abel next time for more conversations that challenge perspectives.
This podcast is produced by Two Stories, written by Linda Scarborough, produced by Carol Williams, with audio editing, engineering, and sound design by Kozi Mzimela, with production assistance from MNC Saatchi Group South Africa's team, Machik Dubla and Nadia Siegel. Special thanks to Sonic Nursery and Edible Audio for the recording of these episodes.